Welcome to ThugCrowd Radio. Please listen to this important disclaimer in its entirety. All participants of this ThugCrowd Radio episode are characters. None of the stories told during these episodes are based on facts, truth, or reality. All works of fiction displayed during this episode that resemble real-life situations are coincidental and are not meant to serve as guides or tutorials to commit any crimes in any country. Please consult an attorney for local laws and regulations. And as always, trust your inner criminal.
Hey.
Hello.
Hi. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another rip-roaring episode of ThugCrowd.
Welcome
I'm
back
here.
this week.
Hi. Hey, thanks. Yeah, I took a much-needed break from everything. And it was fun. Finally finished some projects that I've been working on for months that have just been dead in the water, and I like having some time to play with those instead of just sitting in my desk, spinning around, wondering what I'm supposed to be doing with myself.
Nice.
Yeah. So how's everybody this week? You guys do anything cool?
Nope.
I mean, just busy, man. I started playing Exapunks thanks to Jin, and
Yes, how do you like it?
it's lit as fuck, dude.
You have to pay him your Steam and be friends on it.
Yeah, like check
What-
it out.
what is
like
this
you have
game?
to print a zine. Like you print it and staple a zine, and in it, it's got like the instruction set and like examples of different things that you have to do within said instruction set to pass different levels. Like it was very cool. Like you step over your instructions. Like, yeah, but it's gamified and stylized, so it makes it fun rather than just like looking at GDB. I don't know.
Yeah. The fun stuff. No, I mean I was wondering about it because you guys have talked about Exapunks a bunch, and it looks pretty cool. But I don't really play games that much though, unfortunately. But yeah,
It's all right. You know how to adult you. That's all that means.
yes, but it doesn't mean I don't know how to fun, which I feel like I'm slowly realizing I don't. So, but but yeah, I'm glad everyone's doing well. Yeah, last week's stream was really really good too. I'm excited that you guys all could carry on the torch in case I ever run away forever.
Shell, good step in. Shout out to Shell.
When I exit scam everybody and collect my crypto millions off of Thug Coin. But yeah, all right. So yeah, we have a pretty cool show this week, and a lot of people in voice to, which is awesome. We have IanColdwater here, who some of you may know from the internet. We're gonna talk about Kubernetes, container security, DevSecOps, CTFs, and getting more ladies involved in CTF and InfoSec. So yeah, I'll post the show notes too in our Twitch chat as well. There we go. It's a nice Kubernetes deployment here, pretty hefty. So I guess we should get right into it. So yeah, let's talk about the first item here, which is Google went down after some BTP stuff. Anybody following the story?
Yeah, a bit as it unfolded.
I think that boy 9x was on top of it pretty quickly. But it's like this is, I mean, just a scale up of what happens when we still use BGP and we're still relying, mutual trust as a method of authentication, and it's scary. Like,
Yeah.
Oh, I'm your peer. Okay, I therefore inherently trust you with everything.
Yeah. No, I mean it's interesting to see how these things sort of unfold. So saying it started here with a carrier in Lagos, and then a bunch of other stuff sort of unfolded after that. But yeah, it's interesting to see though because there's so many different countries with their own connections to everything else, and there's just no stopping really anybody from doing anything like this. When you're
Yeah,
using
there
this sort
was
of
a case in Australia like ages ago where like this ISP, which is notoriously like terrible, basically just said that they had like half the routes for the internet, and lots of things broke. And I mean, who are they? Like they're just some random ISP in Australia. Why do they matter to the entire world?
Yeah, why does someone in like Nicaragua get to decide, where I'm routing my internet traffic with any sort of authority?
Yeah, could be anybody like anywhere. It's really weird.
Yeah.
That's the case now. But yeah, I was wondering too. I'm reading this. The article said that there wasn't anything to do with the Facebook one, but I'd also heard people saying that Facebook was down as well.
I wouldn't know. I think anyone who has half a brain doesn't hit Facebook on a daily basis.
Come on, bro. I've
Well-
seen your Facebook.
Oh, bro. I just got roasted by PD Pablo.
Also, I just realized that the Twitch chat is still in the mode of the old stream, so it's tiny. As a stream from the 24-hour stream. Hold on a second.
Did somebody take ownership of the BGP thing? I recall it being some Nigerian ISP or something like that.
Yeah, it was something similar. Yeah, I think it came out of Nigeria, but I'm not sure like what the whole excuse is for it yet. If anyone said that it was an accident or what.
It's really easy to fuck up BGP. So
Yeah, I don't know what like. Yeah, I don't know. If you were, I mean, considering where we've seen it get triggered from, right? So like these like smaller entities are like triggering larger problems. If you were in internet bad people and or internet organizations with money, like wouldn't you use this thing that's really like if you wanted to own like a no-name ISP who has these abilities to broadcast routes, like wouldn't you just do that and then intercept whatever you want all the time?
I mean, in theory, but it's also loud as fuck. Usually, if you screw up an announcement, somebody notices pretty rapidly.
Yeah. There's that. We've talked about it before. There's a Twitter feed that does BGP hijacks, but
Yeah,
the thing is
yeah.
that they happen all the time, right? So
Yep.
like, yeah, so like if it's attributed to a shitty ISP that doesn't have the ability to do any real response on, then
Oh yeah,
that's
definitely.
just like taking candy from kids here.
It's almost like you want to get a shell over there and be able to fat finger some announcements that allow you about a minute or two of traffic that you want.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like coordinating with something's going down, ready, set, go. You got 2 minutes.
Yep.
Okay, good.
I love how it's a default answer to say, there's no compromise with us. That's my favorite, especially when you read over this shit. Fucking disgusting.
We saw nothing in the logs.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean
that we have.
So the vulnerability, I guess, if we look at it, if we step back from BGP, like the vulnerability is just based right back to like peer-based trust, like inherent trust of peers. Like that's where the real problem is.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, it's wild that like someone, where you've never routed your traffic before, in a country you've never seen, never been to, gets to tell you where your traffic goes.
Can I ask? And I know no one will probably admit if they are, but who's using Google Compute to this day?
Who's using GCP?
Yeah.
I mean, all the people that didn't figure out Amazon's better.
Unless you're running Kubernetes, in which case GCP is leaps and bounds beyond AWS or Azure.
Yeah, it's set up for Kubernetes. That's where I learned it on.
All right, I'll pay that one for sure. But yes, I've been using a
Yes.
Kubernetes cluster on GCP.
I have my Hello Worlds up.
Oh.
Yeah.
See, like I heard him sigh and put his head down. Good shit.
But yeah, interesting stuff though. Interesting to see how it plays out against something like Google, which is huge. But yeah,
Yeah.
all right, let's go to the next story here, which is Bug Bounty Hunter ran ISP doxing service. This is interesting.
Surprise!
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there's a lot more people than this one person in particular who do this, who participate.
Wait, I met that kid.
Yeah, I saw you talking about that on Twitter. Yeah, I mean, there's people that I guess I don't know. It's if you are there actively researching this stuff, I mean, it's probably. I'd like to hear Casey Ellis's opinion on this kind of thing, because people who then are able to have the ability to hit something for a bug bounty, like out in the they have the permission to do so, and then they are held also with the same accountability as reporting as they are. Like they have, I guess, the obligation to report it, but they don't have to. I mean, there's nothing stopping them from not, I guess, but they have the ability to hit certain functionality that normally they would trigger some sort of IDS or other weird thing because they're in scope, but then can leverage those sort of vulnerabilities for other things as well. So it's an interesting
I mean,
sort of thing.
this is an ISP, like T-Mobile specifically. Again, notorious for being
Yeah, remember the person from earlier this year with the plain text passwords thing? It's T-Mobile Austria.
Is Cricket still around?
I have no idea.
So one of the things I noticed though, like about the guy, right? Like you look at his social media presence, like he's got himself a banner with a photo of himself. He's got like a logo, and he's a streamer and a gamer, and also a security researcher, and he's advertising that he's the plug. Like, so what is confused here is his advertising his gaming stuff, and now he's advertising his like hacking hookups, like his doxing, sim swapping hookups.
Yeah, and if you look into those eyes, you can tell he's capable of looking at two shells at once, simultaneously.
Well, I mean, these sort of things, though. I mean, when it sort of bleeds a line, because I mean, like if you are doing these sort of things, but you also have your, your persona is as a security researcher, but you also do things on the side that are potentially, unsavory. You have to sort of draw a line somewhere, and it's hard because when you get a 3-letter username or 4-letter username on some website and you want to brag about it, it's hard to not let that bleed over and use that for your self brand.
Yeah, I mean, like you look at his posts he's like looking for Ryan S RS Iron, like like posting on was it Hack Forum?
No,
that guy can't program. Fun fact. I had to write some for him, but he's a good person, that kid. I like him.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that these people are necessarily bad, but when you are doing things that are illegal, like sim swapping, you should not tie it to yourself in your other online personas. Whether they are, I'm also not giving up criminal tips, but this is definitely criminal tip of the day. Don't mix business with pleasure, I guess.
I would
agree. Didn't the plug donate $500 to ThugCrowd during the charity event?
Did he? Is that what that was? That was somebody.
Did you see that?
Plug.
Oh, okay.
I didn't even see. I don't know.
I saw
Yeah.
somebody named Plug, but it just said plug in the little message box. So who knows? If
Well,
this was
thanks
this
again
person-
for the $500 plug. If you're listening,
Yes, thank
Oh,
you.
yeah.
And if this is you, I guess thanks, but it's also yeah, I don't know. I'm just saying, I guess it's a cautionary tale for people who do certain things like this. If you are somebody who has direct access to a bug bounty platform and you find bugs and you also leverage those bugs, perhaps you should rethink what you are doing because that's obviously going to be tied back to you and your personal financial information. If you are a researcher, especially through BugCrowd or Hackforum, you're going to have to put in your stuff somewhere, your real info. So yeah.
I mean,
yeah,
you bring
just,
up a good point. It's like public dumps of 0 days, right? How fucking stupid are you? Like, you shouldn't do that. Your rep is then torn to shit.
yeah, double
There should
dipping
be-
is really dumb.
Yeah.
There's the OPSEC for hackers or OPSEC from freedom fighters by the Grok as well. Like, compartmentalize. So say this, you wanted to be famous and infamous at the same time, which you can't. Well, in most cases, you can't. Then don't, like, if you're the guy who has access to the API, don't be the guy who has access to the guy selling the API. Like, there's
Yeah.
things, cross contamination of those two personas, like, is insta fail.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it, right, is that kids, especially, like, have that immortality complex, and really, really want that fame, that whatever. And I mean, a lot of times, also too, with bug bounties, right, is you're finding these things that could be sold for a lot of money, but for whatever reason, either you don't want to go through the work of exploiting them and making the money off of it on your own, or whatnot. You just give them to the bug bounty vendor. But with something like T-Mobile stuff and being able to dox people, like, it kind of fits into something that this person already knows and has like an established route, I guess you would say, for being able to sell.
I guess with the bug bounty thing, like, the difference between getting paid out for a bounty and writing, a real weaponized exploit that's, it's has all the parts to make it a weapon. Like, Akinetics doesn't write exploits for you, bro. Like, Burp Suite doesn't write exploits. Like, you need to put 2 and 2 together, and then you need to take it to a further step if you really want it to be like a proper exploit. Like, exploiting something, through Burp or whatever, it's not a product that you can sell. It's just a bug that you can submit, and this platform will give you money. So the barrier to entry from finding bug to get money is a lot lower.
That brings up a good point. What do you see as being someone who actually writes custom exploitation as a skill set? I think it's highly beneficial and something people should definitely do a lot of research on and dig into.
Yeah,
think it's what we're
Finbar and
lacking.
so Thoth and Grok had a conversation that, with two people part of. There's a thread about it on Twitter, maybe like 2 weeks ago, about like what is a weaponized, like what is an exploit and what is a weaponized exploit, like what makes it weaponized, what's the full deal, like at what point does it become a cyber weapon?
Yeah. I don't know though. Like, I haven't actually looked into any like classes or special stuff set aside that actually actively teaches you to do that sort of thing. And I think that's what we lack a lot of, is we're always weeks behind when trying to exploit or run some exploit package against something that's exploitable. It's just like, it blows my mind as far as how much stuff isn't like customly written.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I've written POCs before that have been released that that are on my GitHub and stuff, and it's like, yeah, it works, yeah, it exploits, yeah, you get a shell. But if you were really going to turn that into next level, what kind of payload do you put with it? What is your actual target? Like, oh, okay, so you own I don't know, you own a router or something, right? So what do you actually do with it? Like, why are you targeting that device? what are you going to do next? Like, what does that device protect? Like, there's a whole bunch of different like ideas that go into what actually steps it up.
Sorry,
But
that's
it's
just it's weird shit that I've just like been considering lately.
yeah,
Like literally being the person who writes the shit that gets implemented into products.
I just think that like the mentality of a lot of people who are in infosec like don't want to like they're like, oh no, I'm just I don't do criminal things, I just pen test with burp and write reports. Like that's I find the security flaws and we fix them. But that's where like bug chains and things become more exciting, because you know if you're an okay pen tester and you find a couple of bugs that you can chain together, you'll be like, oh, okay, I'll report these, they'll get fixed. But if you were really writing a weapon, like, wouldn't you see how far does the rabbit hole go? Like, how many times do you pivot until you've gotten to the sensitive data that you wanted to steal or something like that? Like, there's a whole, you know, before you get to the
Well, that's the difference between pen testing and hacking, dude.
Right,
Yeah.
And I mean, nobody wants to know about hacking. Everybody wants to know about pen test or infosec. And it's a bit of a shame.
Well, it's if you want
It's
to
not
make
a
money.
bit of one. It's a
Legitimate money.
fucking shame. Like, honestly. But yeah.
Well, let's
mean,
I
continue.
guess next story is speaking of somebody who did get away with it. According to Vice, hacking team Phineas Fisher has got away with it. So basically, the people who were trying to get after him for the hacking team stuff declare that they just don't know who he is. So
Yay!
Yay.
it's just like one of those things where you're like, okay, interesting, because it's, you know, when you do something on the level that he did, you're definitely going to have some people who are after you that are not necessarily experienced, since the people that he targeted were people who actually did this professionally for nation state. And so nobody's been able to find who he is, except for that time that he did that puppet thing.
Yes.
But
He also gave a updated interview there to fill in some of the gaps about how he got in, which was interesting. I don't know if anybody noticed that part, but it was due to the corporate VPN. Effectively, I think, was it the founder? I don't know. Some high up individual within that company decided they could not be bothered to install the new VPN, so they kept the old server up just for this guy, and that was the point of entry.
Excellent.
I mean, this is interesting, like what Shell was saying before about like God complex and not wanting to, you know, wanting to be like younger people, like wanting to do stuff. Like if you think a lot about people who SWAT people, and like that guy who got the other guy shot, SWATistic, he said that he got a rush out of being wanted by the police and like all that kind of stuff, which is understandable, but at the same time, like he didn't, like, that's not the right, like I feel like this guy probably really had the heat on, you know, like he was probably really sweating and going to the nth degree to not get caught. Whereas like if you're getting a rush out of not wanting to get caught, then make sure you're not going to get caught, right?
Yeah.
A little bit. Speaking of, I believe that came out with the recent wave about how he didn't get caught, and you know, there's the typical Tor protections, things like that. But it sounds like the ultimate wall of frustration for the Italian authorities was in the way he obtained the Bitcoin, because they traced it all the way back to, I think it was kind of distributed, but a large focus was on one of these exchanges where you could like trade things for scratch off something, or I don't know what it was exactly, but effectively the Bitcoins were stolen. So there was no record of transfer, even something like local Bitcoins where it's still, you know, you're going to be able to find the email records, or you figure out where that interview the individual who did the physical swap, and figure out where they were, maybe pull to the security cameras. None of that existed when you're stealing the origin of the Bitcoins. So that's the hard stop they run into, is being unable to trace it back due to the theft.
Nice. protect kids. I mean, you know, for investigative purposes.
So yeah, our next story here is about this BCM UPnP hunter stuff. So basically, there's a botnet that is targeting some Broadcom routers through the UPnP port, and yeah, it's been going around a bunch. And I don't know if anybody has experienced any actual hacked routers with this.
Is this the bug where you could remotely forward ports using UPnP? Like you could hit UPnP externally and then just forward internal ports, like to where.
I think so. It's an older bug. I don't remember exactly. Hold on, let me look at this here. I saw.
Wait, that worked. So it functioned exactly as it would internally, but on the external face.
Oh, it's the format string one. It's the pre-auth.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but it's been around for a while though. Yeah. So it's on
this still comes down to UPnP being exposed on the WAN interface, though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's like multiple fails for this to still be active.
Yeah.
So that's excellent.
Interesting stuff though, because I don't really know, I guess, where these types of routers are these more for corporate industrial stuff rather than like home routers?
Billion, D-Link, Cisco Linksys, now Belkin, TP-Link. Yeah, not all the stuff.
Most of that stuff's consumer.
Yeah,
Consumer-based products.
Yeah, I mean,
morons who don't patch anyway.
But I mean, not to say that. I mean, I definitely know that there's businesses that operate on the same hardware. They're just like, we need the internet. Oh, ISP sends us a router. Like, plug it in. It works. Now internet for our office. It's like, you fucking go spend $1,000, you cheap pricks. Like $1,000.
That's the thing too. Think about like firewall AP devices. How much do they cost? They're a K a piece, right?
Right.
So how many people do it the right way, and how many people just think consumer products are a way of getting by? It's a different story too, in terms of budget as well, and how much money someone's trying to make, or what raises they're getting on a yearly basis based on spending.
But I think if you've got enough money to have an office, you can surely have enough money to buy a router.
You would think, man. You also have very frugal people in operations, so.
I mean, it's still like the way it comes down to the way people think about security still, and like that's always going to be what it comes down to.
Yep. But have you compared an out of $1,000 versus something you get at Best Buy for $50? Not a whole lot of difference unless you're gonna actually tune that properly. So.
Yeah, I mean that's what one of the barriers is, that you need someone who's got at least CCNA, JNCA, or whatever, to go and actually configure it, or get someone in who can configure it and manage it. I mean, fuck, you could put PFSense or OpenSense, PFSense, like any one of those.
Yeah, OpenSense, MonoWall, PFSense.
Yeah, SmoothWall. Like, I mean, I'm sure that even with the Cisco Juniper type hardware, there's still problems. It's not it's not infallible. It's not the magic bullet.
Did you say Cisco Juniper type?
Well, I'm just using major vendors as an example.
Juniper's better.
Yeah, I know, I love Juniper. But I'm just saying, I'm just saying, it's not the silver bullet. It's just much, much better, and you're not going to get it 2000s era UPnP rocking out on you on your endpoint. So
Yep.
But you might have a buffer overflow in IPsec. Man, I always bring that up. But
yeah, I mean, yeah, there's always going to be something somewhere, but boy, oh boy.
Hell yeah. Also, next one is pretty cool too. This side channel stuff in NVIDIA. So there's some researchers who had put out a method to run a malicious, what do they call it? A malicious computational workload, aka Bitcoins
What?
on the GPU, which operates alongside the victim's application. So depending on the parameters, intensity, and pattern of contention in the cache, this is way too verbose, but basically, people are able to run certain malicious computational workloads on GPUs.
Were they targeting specific miners?
I'm not exactly sure. It seems like they are just some, just NVIDIA GPUs. There's a full white paper about it, but when I see white papers on GPU stuff, there's always like physics graphs that I just.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm like,
the white papers are for the people who are at the level of writing white papers.
Yeah,
like that's who white papers are written for generally.
Yeah,
Unless you're like me and read them for fun.
Yeah.
One
I
of the
love
things I'm
read
taking
them
away
for
from this
fun,
though is that WebGL keeps coming out, like OpenGL and web browsers. So like that's what makes it way more scary, I guess, is being able to do, because previously like WebGL and rendering wasn't exposed, like didn't expose 99 like almost everything that you can do with like CUDA, right? So if they're saying that you could potentially get through a web renderer a malicious GPU workload, that's opening up serious doors that were previously thought to be closed. So I think that's
all that
scariest
sort of
part.
hardware acceleration stuff that's available is still like, some of it's very experimental. It even says it in the browser, so there's certain things that I don't know, I guess, enough about GPU programming to be able to make this thing or to be able to make sense of how you'd actually go about implementing this. But the vectors for it are definitely becoming more and more widespread due to people wanting that sort of hardware acceleration for GPU things, running stuff in browser and crazy effects.
I mean, what if you had like a malicious hashcat workload that you were distributing with like HashTopus or something through an XSS on like, a social media site? Like all of a sudden you're like cracking ridiculous hashes because people are looking at like, their social media stream.
Oh,
yeah. You have it in some like just random 1 pixel by 1 pixel canvas element that's just going ham.
I mean, should we just start unchecking hardware acceleration for browsers?
I typically do because I don't really have nice computers anyways. So.
But one of the things that has been an issue with like traditionally the sort of crypto workloads, like cryptocurrency proof of work workloads being performed in a browser, like with, for example, the what's that place called? There's like a capture that's not really a capture; it's just like a content gate.
Yeah.
What's it? Shell, you know what it is? Coin
Yeah.
something.
CoinHive.
Yeah, CoinHive. That's it.
The API for farming.
So CoinHive, right? You basically get like looks like a capture, and you have to wait for it to like mine one block or one whatever it's doing, one workload, and then you move on to the next. Now the problem is that that's happening at a CPU level in your browser, and everything run like traditionally. That one thread just like maxes out at 100%, and then you're like, oh shit, why is my one thread, like, why is my computer fucking up? I've only got 2 cores and now my desktop is lagging. When you start moving things to the GPU, like, the user probably won't notice, other than maybe their computer's getting a little bit loud. I mean, unless they're gaming, I guess, but for general usage, like a little bit of a frame drop, like,
Yeah, that's the thing about like this kind of stuff too, right? Is that it's very easy to target like people who have GPUs. Like, what they're doing with their GPUs generally, like it's gaming stuff. And so like when I was actually tearing apart malware, I was looking at for like YouTube, like Fortnite aimbot videos. I was downloading all of the exes that link to, and there's a lot of coin miners there.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point. It's like how much attention are people actually paying to their home systems as far as loads go and where those loads go? That's just disgusting. Like if you're a gamer and like you have a custom PC, you should know when something's not right, or you should be paying attention to like frame rates or what's happening or where video memory is allocated. It's disturbing.
But if you look at the task manager in Windows, right, like it doesn't show you GPU load. You need to install something else because
Of course, man. It's expected with Windows, though. I mean, that's just the joke that it is. But yeah, you're right.
It's the same with Linux. Like, although like LM sensors will give you some stuff, and you know the NVIDIA driver has some stuff, but like generally, it's fairly blind. Other than like temperature is the main thing you'll notice from LM sensors, but actually no, I think actually I lie. There is a GPU load, but yeah, it's not something people are really looking at.
Yeah, definitely gonna keep an eye out for that stuff though, and actually read this white paper. And actually looks really interesting though, because this is using WebGL. This is stuff that people are developing on right now for all sorts of fun projects. So yeah, tech pictures galore. So the next one we have on here though is also related to cryptocurrency. This is fake cryptocurrency wallets found in the Play Store. I mean, this is a given. I don't trust like any of the wallets that are in the Play Store, except for the one that's officially given out on the Bitcoin website. Even still, I don't like that one. But yeah, there are some fake wallets that you should look out for.
It's fucking hilarious, though. You think about like Google Play Protect and what was put in place. They're just looking for malicious packages, not stuff that's just built to be malicious in the first place, right?
I mean, yeah, you don't even have to because it's not like it's doing anything that would necessarily be malicious by asking for permission. It's doing what you want it to do, just not putting things where you want them to go. So it's not necessarily like anything that would. I feel like it would be really difficult to figure out. You have to audit each individual one to know. And also, figure out who's getting the most complaints. But I mean, there's so many apps with so many complaints that it's also a huge thing to have to wade through. And people who are new to cryptocurrency might just chalk it up to them not understanding what they're doing before they realize that all their transactions are being just siphoned off somewhere else.
Yeah,
definitely. One of the things that's been common in the past with wallets as well is like you have, so when you generating your address, it's actually already pre-generated like X100 using the same seed, like using the same random seed, not the actual wallet seed. The system randomness seed is not used, and it's using its own seed. So you can predict you have like deterministic wallet addresses for the next however long. So you can like either correlate stuff, or you can guess stuff, or you can do other wallet-based attacks. So there's a long history of like since people have figured out how to write their own Bitcoin wallets, people have been writing them poorly. And I think this is just the iteration where they go like, hey, let's not accidentally write them poorly. Let's like purposely write them poorly. It makes sense.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Like someone brought up a good point where it's like there's things that like look malicious, and then there's things that are malicious while just looking like they're doing exactly their function. And also, like with this stuff, I was just looking at like Bing search results earlier, and it's hilarious how many of them are actually malicious, and how many of those malicious things rank higher than the actual thing you're searching for. And I feel like especially on like Google Play and a lot of this other stuff, like where you can just put an ad up there, and like it immediately throws whatever you have to the top. And if you're not obviously malicious,
do you guys want to talk about Bing?
It could be
Bing. Hell.
The one that makes decisions for you to install malware.
You search for Google Chrome and malware comes up first.
Fucking nasty, dude.
But yeah, like I think the Google Play like star system as well, it's like it's straight up the same concepts as like obviously SEO, but then the black SEO. Just downvote the shit, like give 1-star reviews from 1,000 accounts to the top wallet, and just keep doing that every day until it just has bad reviews everywhere.
Yeah.
Like, even if you find like one UI bug that is actually a UI bug, like if you go back and forward between these two screens and then like swipe up, swipe down, like Konami code shit, then this text doesn't render perfectly. Bug. And then other people will be like, oh yeah, this thing's got bugs. It's shit. It's like it doesn't have to, other people will follow that kind of stuff.
Well, it's like we were talking about a while back too. Like it's with GitHub, right? It's like all people look at. It's like the stars. You have the stars, you're good. It's like it doesn't matter if your code's actually malicious.
It doesn't matter if your code actually works. As long as it
Yeah.
does.
If you got the stars, you got the shit.
Everybody, please star everything in github.com/ThugCrowd so that we can make it to the top of the page.
Yeah, I'm gonna start
Yeah.
With our
publishing.
fork of open SSH.
NPM package.
You know what's really funny though?
What?
It's on GitHub.
Everything's on GitHub.
The best
Not
site on the internet.
everything. I mean, that's where everyone looks. That's the shitty part. So
I forget who said it, but someone said earlier this week that GitHub was the best site on the internet. So we'll leave it at that.
Mhm.
that was me.
The next one that we have here is an attack that uses a malicious in-page document and outdated VLC media player to give attackers backdoor access to target. Now, I don't think I'd ever heard of in-page before I read this article, but it's a way of creating Urdu language documents that basically had some sort of a vulnerability in it that would be able to drop a malicious DLL in there and then use that to attack VLC's DLLs or do some DLL hijacking on loop VLC. So yeah, you can see the whole malware or the attack chain in there. But it's interesting though because we saw this before, and I was trying to find which specific one we covered before. But there was one that had attacked Korean language documents, I believe, and it was a text parsing error that triggered some sort of code execution somewhere. But I don't remember exactly which one it was. I'm not sure if it was this. What was it called? It's one of the North Korea hits, though. The Mao Cheng rat dropper, I believe it was. But regardless, though, it's interesting to see these kinds of bugs in the amount of encoding that it has to take place on all sorts of different operating systems. And yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, this is weird, especially because it says, right, in-page is like a word processor, and you're exploiting VLC with it.
Well, yeah, you're using in-page as a way to download and replace a DLL to attack VLC. So it's just a chain of exploits here. But it's still interesting though. There's this, it's only used, it's Urdu, Persian, Pashto, and Arabic, which all have different writing systems and different text direction. And so all those different sorts of things can cause issues to be seen on countless text and Unicode parsing bugs. But yeah, it's pretty interesting though. I wonder how many more sorts of things like this there are, where there are specific applications that are used specifically to render certain types of text. I assume there's a lot because there's just so many languages in the world. But
yeah, for sure.
Keep a lookout for. Yeah. So we can take a look at some of our good reads too. The Steam bug, I guess, was actually kind of funny that somebody was able to find a way to use Steam's game API to figure out which install keys belong to which games, and they could just download them and install any game.
Yeah, that one was actually funny because basically the API asked you how many keys you had or how many keys you wanted. And if you said 1 and you didn't own the game, it would give you an error saying you didn't own the game. But if you asked it for 0 keys and you just didn't own the game, it would give you a key. Which is, and so you just generate keys for whatever game you wanted through that API.
I mean, do you guys have the checker for this, or?
Well, apparently
I
this.
want Red Dead Redemption 2 on PC.
Well, you know where to look. Your checkers. Yeah. So yeah, that's really cool though. I'm glad someone found that. Although it apparently does not work anymore.
Oh, yeah.
But that
it
is
was
still.
it was submitted to the bug bounty program.
Oh, okay.
So
yeah, no,
yeah, he got 25 grand for finding Steam. I mean, I
Oh,
feel like
really?
Steam, yeah, I feel like Steam is one of the platforms that I wouldn't attack sheerly out of like the amount of effort that would go in to find a bug in it. Like, I mean, I'm sure there's plenty, but I'm sure plenty of people are looking, you know.
Well, the thing about it is that a lot of the endpoints people attack are hidden behind, like, you have to pay $100 fee in order to become a developer, and most of the bugs that come out of the Steam program are from those developer endpoints.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, you don't get as many people hitting it as you would necessarily think for that reason, or at least where most of it comes from. If you look at what they disclose, which is a fair amount.
Time to start looking at Discord with Nitro coming up hot.
Oh man,
Present him
I
with
don't
the
think
can
we
and
even
why.
need
So.
Nitro.
Shh. So yeah, the next one that we have here, also interesting too, the PHP LDAP admin 0 day here that's got violently disclosed.
Just anything that has like PHP my anything admin, like just write it off as fucking stupid, like fucked. Do not touch.
Just put PHP a protocol and admin after it. See what comes back.
We should have a generator for that. To
Yeah.
just come up with them automatically.
PHP
PNP my admin.
It's disgusting.
PHP SMB1 admin. Yeah, so there I got released. So take a look at it. It's in our thing here. I don't know how common. I'd never heard of PHP LDAP admin. I'd heard of LDAP admin, but not that one. So I don't know. But that's a pretty serious one to hit if you can to add your own users and things like that. So
Shout out to these little guys, Keksec for that.
But look how short the actual disclosure is. Like there's not a great deal there. I mean, it's like looking at it, it looks like it's the server side code that this is going to correlate with is not going to be very glorious at all. Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, so 2 more good reads here. I didn't actually read this one, the systemd dynamic user feature. I forget who actually put this one in here because it seemed cool, but I don't have enough info to explain it. Hold on. Did anybody read this one?
I did not.
Wait, so it's creating a dynamic user when at like sometime systemd unit?
Yeah, I don't know. Actually, hold on, I'm looking at here. My computer's being slow.
Give everyone a second to read up.
That's what I'm doing, though, right? Don't call me out.
Talk about it. Yeah, I didn't expect us to actually get to this in our little chats here, but yeah, systemd doing a thing.
Yeah, everyone's favorite.
Someone linked it in IRC earlier in the week, and there was a talk given at BSDCon about systemd and its ideals. Like, did anyone watch that?
No,
did not.
Oh, man, it was. I 80% liked it and 20% fucking hate it. But it brought up some really good points about systemd, and then it sort of like killed it with like, yeah, you guys should embrace some of the things it can do with like, naming of devices because of slots and stuff like other shit that I don't agree with. And I was just like, okay, here we go. Here comes the fucking propaganda.
Seems like some type of redundancy that was built in and was then exploited. Like if you look over this, it's fucking weird.
Yeah, I mean,
Like-
this is the kind of thing that like a dynamic user, like you don't need like some of the features in System D have just gone out of control. Like some of the core things that it does is quite good, and some of the things that it does are unnecessary and should be like like optional type stuff. Like this type of thing looks like definitely optional. Like I don't want System D to create users when a unit like when a unit is triggered. Like I
Right,
want
but
it
what
to
kind of
just-
option is that? Like they'd probably present it as, "Hey, do you want this failover feature?" And you'd be like, "Yeah, of course I do." It's fucking, I don't know. It's treachery for sure.
Well, it would be more like, do you want to create a failover user? Like, hell no. Like, if the user doesn't exist, then they don't have access.
Right,
Yeah.
but how many people think like you do, DNZ?
I don't know. Maybe there should be some more.
There should be some. You're right
Maybe
there,
it
dude.
shouldn't be, in fact. But I'm not going to say people should think like me. I'm a fucking asshole.
Yeah, on the last one here, I think Shell, did you share this one about the
Yeah.
piracy? So yeah, that was interesting because there's obviously tons of shady things that happen in general. I think actually one of my favorite talks that I've seen, I think it was at DerbyCon. There's a video that I've seen. It's Jason Scott about it was called "You're Stealing It Wrong," like 25 years or something of inner pirate battles. And this kind of reminded me of a little bit of just the different things that people have to do to get pirated games.
It's funny though. You think
And-
about like emulators and ROMs that you can do off this shit, and you've been able to for a long time. It seems like the furthest thing from Nintendo's mind is building something in that's uncrackable, for a lack of a better
Yeah.
term. But it's
This sort of thing though has been happening for years. It's happening since the dawn of video games. I mean, people were
Oh, yeah.
weren't they gonna didn't they have that sort of Tempest scanner thing that I forget what company had wanted to do that would be able to drive at people's houses to tell if they were using pirated software or not. Like stuff like that's been going on since the 80s. Like so it's interesting to see though how this sort of thing is now spread when technology is ubiquitous and everybody is
I can confirm that like Nintendo have like there's markets, and obviously you guys have the shady markets where you can go buy like 3DS like pirate cards that have an SD card and stuff. Those things. Like Nintendo definitely in this like here at least go around to those markets, the real popular ones that sell a lot, and take their shit and shut them down. Like they do actually.
Yeah.
But like that's about the extent of I've ever heard.
Excuse
Whereas,
me,
like,
PD. Do you have a moment to talk about Simu?
I do like look at if you take Xbox for example. If you played an Xbox game that was not released online, you would be banned from Xbox Live, like to your console, right?
Yeah.
There was different, there's different approaches. And I think
Nintendo's is weird though. I don't think they focus so much on the like online side of things. That's why like things like Simu exist and like Wii U emulators where you can seriously just sit there and and choose what you want and go with it. Like,
Well,
it's
yeah,
fucking
but I
funky.
mean, that's because the Wii U, they decided not to put any more time into it now that they're not releasing games for it anymore.
Right, but the same thing will probably end up happening with Switch. You're going to see another emulator program pop up and something that people actively develop and make money off of.
Oh yeah,
I'm fairly certain that like the Xbox was the most hacked console, obviously, for a long time until the Wii came along.
Oh yeah, well yeah, the Xbox Media Center was huge.
Yeah, it's still a thing. Like I still to this day use Kodi on my TV because it's convenient. I mean, to watch PVR shows through my TV capture card.
You guys ever play Halo CE?
Oh yeah.
Good shit.
But yeah, no, Nintendo actually is a lot more aggressive about protecting their copyrights than most. Recently, with their whole like Super Nintendo, like SNES Classic and NES Classic, they went through and they literally pretty much purged all of the ROMs that they had specifically on that box. A lot of their like very popular ROMs. They went and they sent cease and desist to a ton of different like ROM websites.
Hey, what was that? We talked about this previously, but there was which one of those mini consoles was dumped and found to be running like actually pirated ROMs?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
Because they had a header from like some, I forget who it was, but somebody had put something in there that was a signature basically of a pirated ROM that they had made, and people had found that.
Yeah,
The good stuff.
the good stuff.
Yeah, that's yeah, that's that double-edged sword of archiving and piracy. You can make backups for yourself.
Yeah.
And then the PlayStation had the wobble on the lens so that it would follow the wobble on the disc.
I had never heard of that.
Yeah, what
Oh,
is
man,
that?
that was
Can you
PS1.
explain that a little bit?
So when you with the PS1, or the PSX, the the black CD, everyone was like, "Oh no, black CD, that's why you can't copy it." That was actually like bullshit. Like had nothing to do with it. There's this when they press the the CDs, the originals, the line that is the like hills and what's it called, hills and dips or whatever on the disc are like not in a perfect line. They actually wobble like side to side, and that wobble is what the laser is following. So when you had a chipped PlayStation, it was able, like, it could still read, it could always read normal CDs, but if the wobble didn't exist, it was something to do with the start of the disc and then the wobble in combination, and that was like their copy protection. But I mean, that those things got mod chips like bitch, like straight up, and all you needed was a CD burner. Comparison to like the N64, where you needed a card, right?
So is this
Yeah.
the original PlayStation? Because the original PlayStation, I thought they burned them backwards, meaning instead of clockwise, they burned them counterclockwise, which is why you had to get the Plexter brands that could also burn counterclockwise. I thought that was the deal.
I think PS1's
think
the
that was
second
PS2.
edition. PS1's the second edition of PlayStation, right? The original.
PSX was the original. I think if Blind Hacker, I think that was. I'm pretty sure it was PS2 that spun.
Oh, was
no,
it?
it might have been GameCube that spun backwards.
Somebody spun them backwards. I remember that because I had to buy a specific brand of Plexter with the right model number to be able to use some software to burn them backwards.
Yeah,
Damn.
so with PlayStation games, I was able, like, I would buy the cheapest 100 stack of dirty CDs and like get a 20% fail rate. But and using like just an any burner, and any burning software. I think it might have even been like what was it? The sheet was like, clone CD or something.
Clone. Oh, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
That's going back.
Yeah, it's just like a little ball of white with like a little black dot as its head. So it's just terribly like 32-bit cheap.
Yeah, like so simple, like click, okay, here's CD.
You put in the first one and then like you wait 10 minutes or whatever, and then it'd be like, all right, put in clone this now, and it'd kick out the CD tray, and then you pop it in and then wait, and then it'd come out and pop it out, and there you were good. You were good to go.
Shit, 10 minutes. Were you rich? This thing could like
probably half an hour. Yeah. When you're young, your time is skewed.
Oh yeah. But hey, it's almost time for our interview. I really quickly wanted to just run through some of the people that had asked or had put their information out there for our Hire a Hacker thing. So yeah, we're trying to make Hire a Hacker, which is a channel that we've had and a page on our website, something a bit more useful for people. And so this is the first, I guess, little edition of it. We'll do a couple minutes, but anybody who is either looking for a job or looking to fill a position is more than welcome to DM us on Twitter or join our Discord. which the link is, I'll just type it in the chat. It's leet.club. So you're more than welcome to join if you're looking for a job. And it doesn't have to be security related, but we have a lot of people in our chat that talk about wanting a job, and they want to either not necessarily do security, but could also do secure development, which is a huge thing that a lot of us are familiar with, but it's hard to figure out where you want to actually apply those skills. So we want to be connecting the right people together. So the first, we have two people that are looking for jobs. So the first one is RevDev, who's here actually, I believe, in the chat now. I'm a full stack dev from Germany looking for work in Germany. They're willing to move or do remote work. They have 4 years experience in PHP and currently working with Angular and Node.js. They don't have any professional pen testing experience, but they participate in CTFs and labs like Hack the Box. And if you want to hit them up, you can hit them up at mail@revdev.me. And anybody who also is looking to contact these people that I'm mentioning can come into Discord and at them, usually find them. The last one is Artron, who's looking for a job that involves network security, website security, systems administration, or forensics. He's also as well. So anybody who, wants to share jobs that they're looking for, you can hit us up and we will shout you out as part out there. But I think we should get into our interview now. Ian, are you still here with us?
I'm still here.
Awesome.
Sweet.
And then you're here as well too?
Yeah, I am here.
How many hot chocolates are you on now? Or how many have you drank so far?
I think 3. I've kind of lost count. The only reason I was going to stop at 6 is because there were 6 in the box. We'll see.
That's a hard limit, though. Yeah.
Let's jump into let's see, Kubernetes, CTFs, and getting more women into CTFs and kind of security in general. So, what's up, Ian?
Hey, I don't know. How are you?
All right. So let's jump into Kubernetes. Everybody asks you, what the hell is Kubernetes? So let's start there. What does it do?
Okay. Kubernetes is a container orchestration framework, and explaining it involves a couple of different levels of abstractions because it helps to know what a container is and why you might want to use one in order to know why you might want to orchestrate many of them. But basically what it does is it takes containers, which are sort of an application and all of its dependencies packaged into a neat little box, and allows you to deploy and manage them in an automated way at scale. It's very useful if you have the use case for it. If you don't have the use case for it, it might be overkill a little bit. And
Nice.
That's the very short version.
Definitely. So taking that from like the sysadmin perspective to help add further scope around there. So, containers are an example. It's Docker, but if we go from like the bare metal up, we're talking about, I assume, installing some level of OS onto the hardware, correct? And then we put Kubernetes on top of that. Is that correct?
Well, that's a question. Okay. Kubernetes is not an operating system. A container is not a thing. It is an image that you deploy, pulling down from an image registry like Docker Hub, or if you have a proprietary one or whatever, and then you deploy that image from there. You can also push it back up if you think about it like a source code repository like Git. So you can Docker pull, you can Docker push. And Kubernetes creates clusters on that contain a master node, which controls the thing, and worker nodes, which contains pods that are logical groupings of containers, and creates networking and structures around them so that they can or cannot talk to one another or work together in a logical way. I don't think you install it like an OS. I think it's a thing that you integrate with, with your existing containers and the system that you have around that.
Okay, so
but a container itself, as I said before, I got distracted slightly, is not a thing. A container is a single process on a larger shared host. So if you think about a VM as like a house with its, it's got its own wiring, it's got its own plumbing, it's got its own OS and resources around it that belongs to it. A container is more like an apartment. Containers will be a single process on that host and will share a kernel and other resources with the operating system and the host itself, whether that's a bare metal host or a public cloud or a private one.
Just got a quick question
Nice.
then.
Yeah.
So you mentioned like so with your Docker containers or something, say you pull in Alpine, it's pretty and you're putting it into Kubernetes and you have like 3 Ps in the pod. Does that mean does that assign like 3 processors to that, or like 3 single processor cores, or are they all sharing resources? Like what's that kind of like?
Everything is going to share resources with the host itself. So it's going to be one process, and it depends, I think, on how you set your Kubernetes cluster up. I think that's going to depend on how you set it up.
So as far
You
as
need to establish like the amount of cores that you're going to allocate to like a Docker instance like that.
Yeah,
Or wherever your cluster is.
provision your resources and your resource quotas according to how much of the host resources you want to go to Kubernetes. You don't have to do that, but you absolutely should, because if you don't, Kubernetes auto scales according to as much resource as it has access to, according to whatever traffic you need. So if you don't provision your resources, you're going to DDoS yourself.
it'll chew on your hypervisor.
Nice.
I was going to ask you, like, what do you, as far as beginners go, as far as someone who's being introduced to Kubernetes, what do you recommend they set up and use, or tools, tutorials online?
Sure. There's a book by Kelsey Hightower called Kubernetes Up and Running. O'Reilly published it a little while ago, and Kubernetes has a 3-month dev cadence. It has a very rapid rate of change, and so that the book itself is slightly outdated, but Kelsey Hightower runs a GitHub version of it that he updates with every new version of Kubernetes. So that's going to be up to date, and that will explain to you the kind of like how to set it up and get it going in your home lab. If you really want to nerd out and know how it works under the hood, there's also a resource called Kubernetes the Hard Way that allows you to bootstrap it from scratch and understand like exactly what's happening at every step of the way. You can install something called Minikube, Minikube.
My favorite.
There you go, on your computer, and kind of set up clusters locally from there. GCP, I do know about at least one of you's feelings about GCP, but GCP for Kubernetes is great. Has pretty good like tutorials and setups for Kubernetes also.
Nice. So it sounds like there's a lot going on there. Everything from the OS and Kubernetes itself is a very large surface. Sounds like there's a lot of attack surface as well.
There is a lot of attack surface, and there's a lot of surface to defend, and a lot of moving parts and a lot of complexity, which on the one hand can be really exciting because there's just so much fertile ground there, and on the other hand, if you are a defender, can be kind of daunting because there's a lot happening and it's really easy to screw up. The good news is it is actually possible to secure it as well as possible to attack it. It's just going to take some work on your part. The bad news on my part as a speaker is that giving one size fits all advice for either how to attack or how to defend Kubernetes pretty much doesn't work, because every install, every cluster, depending on your public cloud, your installer, like which version you have, like what you're running on it, is going to have very different defaults and very different needs for hardening, as well as a somewhat different looking attack surface.
Nice.
So,
how often? Go ahead, DNZ. Sorry.
I was just going to ask, like, so in our brains here, we've spun up a cluster of little thingies that they need to talk to each other with an application running in each one. How does the networking differ from your average plug Ethernet cable between machine 1 and 2 and switch and so on?
That is a fantastic question. So Kubernetes does not natively do its own networking necessarily. It's designed as a Kubernetes itself is API based. It's defined by YAML, and the networking is designed as an overlay. The whole thing is flat, and it's going to provision namespaces and IPs according to namespace. And Kubernetes, the way that it is designed is it's pretty open by default. It is it's made so that like you have granular control over what you can do with it. And that means that you can do your networking any number of ways and you can lock it down very well, but that it won't necessarily be like that out of the box. There is an entire ecosystem of like Kubernetes plugins and products that people use with it. Some networking products that people really like a lot are Envoy Proxy and Istio. People have been talking about running service meshes around that. And that is one way that you could like provision your network out. But basically you're making the decisions about what decisions it makes, and then it will just sort of listen to you. And that is going to look different depending on what you use and how you use it. People use things like Weave or Calico or Flannel on top of that in order to provision that networking too.
So you mentioned Istio, which is one of the few things in Kubernetes land that I've looked at. So with Istio, for example, like you have these little things that are looking at your process, like you're looking at your network communications, and they're also sending their own network communications out. Did you want to talk about maybe sidecars and that sort of thing?
Do I want to? No. To be quite honest, Istio is really complicated, and it is one of the things in Kubernetes land that I'm actually just going to own and be like, this is the thing that I feel less comfortable talking about at length. But if you would like to wax poetic on Istio, I will happily hand it to you for a minute.
I mean, so all right, so like with my short experience with Istio, we're able to inspect like HTTP traffic and basically create rules to limit which services could make API calls specifically to other services, and then actually get telemetry on that. So there's it plugs into Grafana. I think, is it plugged into Grafana? I can't remember.
Little influx DB there.
Yeah, there's a bunch of different ways that you can actually visualize the communication between your network, and then actually use that to further lock it down. And then that traffic, the actual Istio traffic is not accessible. Like you can't just have your pod go and hit the Istio services on the side. They're sort of like running in parallel with the rest of your little cluster.
Yeah.
I hope for anybody who's listening, I hope someone else knows that better than me. That's the best I can explain it.
That's okay. I won't
And you
talk
can
too much, so.
you can do some pretty serious restrictions in network segmentations and different kinds of controls in Kubernetes so that you can only have things see and communicate that are supposed to be, and you can prevent things from being able to see and communicate that aren't supposed to be. As an attacker, if people configure that properly, that will make your life much more difficult. Also, as an attacker, very few people configure that properly. So for whatever that's worth.
Hell yeah.
How often is this being updated and changed? Like from a attacker and defender perspective, how often is that changing the situation?
So Kubernetes itself has a really rapid rate of adoption and a really rapid rate of change. It is the second most active project on GitHub in terms of contributions after the Linux kernel, which is not technically hosted on GitHub. So it's extremely active. It has a very, strong community of developers and people doing various things, pushing code and, working on it and improving it a lot. The last several versions, the security has really improved immensely. They put out a new major version approximately every 3 months. That is their development cadence. As a speaker, it just about exactly lines up with every time I give a new talk about it, and then they break a new part of the attack surface, and then I have to change the talk. The thing is that, like anything else, you can still find older versions floating around in production in the wild. And so although, Kubernetes 1.10 on breaks large parts of what is sort of classically known as the Kubernetes attack surface, you can still find a lot of older versions out there that are not necessarily going to have those controls in place. So as the versions go higher, attackers are going to have to be creative. and defenders are going to have to do less work themselves to be able to configure it because the defaults are going to suck less. As the version goes down, you might find them unshowed and maybe they're abandoned. If it's old enough, there's no authentication and really no protections to it at all.
I was actually about to ask you, so because of this, rate of change and the fact that there's a lot of people who, just get the assignment, like, please DevOps our, current environment, but so what are some of the types of common vulnerabilities and misconfigurations that people do currently or people have done in the past? The people who are looking to, experiment with Kubernetes or even possibly use it on their production environments. What are some of those sort of common vulnerabilities and misconfigurations that people should look out for?
Sure. Okay, so I mean, if you're going far enough back, and when we're talking back, consider that every version of this is roughly 3 months, right? So if you're running anything under Kubernetes 1.6, which right now I think 1.12 is the latest stable, that's still really not that long ago. Kubernetes itself came out in like 2014. If you're running anything below 1.6, there is no multi-tenancy, there are no multi-user roles, there is one user role, that role is admin. There is no authentication on anything by default. There are ports that are natively exposed to the internet that have complete admin control over the entire cluster. It's it's an open door. Generally speaking, in terms of misconfiguration, there isn't still necessarily authentication enabled in places by default, so you might have to set it. Again, the older the version is, the more likely it is that you'll have to do this, but in some places, authentication still isn't there by default, so you want to make sure that that's on there. You want to be using role-based access control, so RBAC, and configuring it properly. You want to make sure that there aren't ports exposed to the wider internet. You can find Kubernetes clusters unshown that have various, interesting configurations to them. And if you have to have a port exposed, you want to make sure there's auth on it. You want to make sure that your data is being encrypted in traffic and at rest, because otherwise it's easy to pick it up. You want to make sure that you're using a version of etcd masternode that is not a version old enough that everything is in plain text, because historically it has been with no authentication involved, and you could just get all of the information about everything in the cluster and all of its metadata from there. And generally speaking, you want to, segment your networks, be careful with your data, be careful with your secrets, provision your resource quotas properly. You want to make sure to log and monitor outside of the cluster, because if somebody is inside the cluster and that's your only source of truth is the logs in the same cluster that just got compromised, those people could tamper with the logs and you won't know any better.
How do you feel about containers as far as maturity goes?
Containers themselves, I think, are, there was a, IBM put out a white paper a little while ago that said that a properly configured container could now be considered as secure as a virtual machine. Whether those containers are properly configured is, of course, another question, but it is a thing that can be done now. I think containers get a bad rap.
Yeah,
but
I also think you're a special case. That's why I was asking you about it.
Right. I think that, Jessie Frizzell, who's amazing, she's JESSFRAZ on Twitter. She's incredible. She, in order to prove that containers could be secure, has a CTF that she put on, it's contained.af, so like contained as fuck. Nobody's ever been able to escape the containers to get the flag. It's never been solved. And she did this to be like, okay, you think that containers can't be secure, watch me. And I'm somewhat familiar with how she set up the back end of it. I've never solved it either. So like that can be done. In terms of like Kubernetes is definitely maturing. I would say that like containers
I have a question
have been around
for you.
a long time. Like they've been around, before we've got containers, we've got shroots, we've got jails, we've got zone, like it's really just a descendant of that. And like, that's a pretty mature tech at this point. Kubernetes is still kind of in awkward adolescence and is growing up a bit.
That's kind of what I was going to ask you too, is like how much of this stuff is integration and dev environments versus actual production stuff that you run on full stack, if anything.
Can you clarify the question?
So if you're running in, do you run, I guess I'm asking, do you run Kubernetes more internally, you think, than you do like in a production environment or something that's publicly accessible?
You're asking me personally?
Yeah.
I don't have a DevOps job anymore. So I can tell you that as of this month, I pen test other people's clusters instead of my own.
And I figured as much. I was saying, how much of that do you see as being misconfigured, though? Is that why you have a pen test role now? Or?
I mean, there are a lot of misconfigurations out there. And, you know, I think that knowing what I know from doing a lot of speaking to a lot of DevOps people, I think it's less common to run it in prod still. And when people do run it in prod, they're often scared and don't really know what to do. But there's, I think, more experimentation by the numbers with Kubernetes in general than there is people running it fully in production. But people are running it fully in production. They're just sort of moving that way slowly.
So what you brought up the project Contained as Fuck earlier. Like there's another project that Jess worked on that I followed a little bit in Go, which was the application profiler and Canary stuff that was container as well. I don't know if you've seen that. It's like pretty.
Yeah, she's got some good stuff out there. With unprivileged containers is pretty great also, and like the ways that there's a word that I'm blanking on. Isolation is being done in a container context. I think her stuff's really interesting.
Yeah, I'm trying to find this. I can't remember what she named it. It starts with B, I think, but it was like when I read it, I was like, oh man, this should be.
Is it the IMG one?
No, it's the one that actually runs as a process within the container and tracks system calls from other processes or files touched using like stuff you'd normally run on a host, but being container aware.
Yeah, her stuff's great. Like pretty much any project I think that you could point to is going to be moving that space forward in really interesting ways. Google Cloud Platform also did a really interesting thing with isolation recently called gvisor that changes the ways that containers don't have hypervisors exactly, but changed the ways that container isolation happens in relation to the processes on the larger host. That was super cool, I also thought.
Oh, you're not coming through.
Because I'm being quiet and waiting for somebody to ask me something.
Oh no, I was saying you was trying to talk, but
oh.
Yeah. Your name is
One second.
Yeah.
You need a new name. Me.
Yeah, that or
I think
just
I'm
say
better.
like
Huh?
you.
Yeah, it was awesome when I used to actually go on party lines. So I wanted to ask you a bit about container escape stuff. So a lot of people hear about container escape for Docker and other sorts of jails and things, but what are some of the sort of I guess techniques that you would use to actually do something like that if you are participating in a CTF or other legal hacking challenge?
It depends on what you're looking at. I guess the answer to Kubernetes security is always depends. I'm so sorry. There was a particularly nasty CVE that came out, I believe, late last year. And I'm looking for the number, which I have written down on a piece of paper in front of me somewhere, which of course I can't find. But it was called subpath host mount. And basically that was a full like host escape where you got root privilege via the way that Kubernetes at the time dealt with mounting. And that was the biggest breaking change that Kubernetes has ever made when they fixed that. But as an attacker, that was a really interesting escape because it allowed you to get full control over the host. Because if you think about the ways, and this is the case in general with container stuff, the thing about shared resources is that like a shared kernel means a shared kernel attack surface, right? So if you have a host or an operating system that is vulnerable to something like Meltdown or Spectre, every container, all of the clusters, all of the everything, all of those processes is going to be vulnerable to the same issues. And the way that Linux in general treats namespaces and the file system, like everything is a file. And so, and the ways, and Kubernetes, every container is basically just a bunch of Linux primitives sort of stapled together, right? Like they're made of C groups and namespaces. The combination of those things can mean that with a misconfigured or unsafe system, that you can, if you're running privilege in a container, you can escape it and then be able to get privileged access to that host, because you can just jump from one namespace to the other. Does that make any sense?
No,
but
it makes total
yeah.
sense. That's what I was saying. Like, if you run a cluster and something's like exploitable on a kernel level, like your cluster's fucked.
Right. And the thing is, Kubernetes is only going to be as secure as the kernel, the operating system, the host itself. And so if you have a vulnerable host, like, those resources are shared, you can go to town. And looking, and if you're in a CTF or other kind of legal hacking challenge and you're trying to enumerate your environment, that those are things to enumerate in a container or cluster context like you would anywhere else.
I think with like Dirty Cow got obviously huge coverage, being one of the big name container escapes of when it happened. But I think it's just a lot of people I've seen that deploy Docker stuff will just be like, oh yeah, no, it's in a container. My Node.js app runs as root. That's cool. Like it's in a container. It's like, but it's like, people don't think that, oh wait, but if you have like access to privileged system calls from the container, you have access to privileged system calls just the same, right?
Correct. Yeah. One of my favorite things that hit the news this week, which didn't get mentioned in the news section, I'm just gonna shout it out for 5 seconds, is that Cloudflare just announced that they created a new cloud platform that compiles all things pretty much into WebAssembly and depends on V8s via JavaScript for isolation between tenants, which is very brave. Puts a lot of faith in JavaScript and a lot of faith in the abilities of those sandboxes to be able to stand up to side channel attacks, which my understanding is that it can't. And so that's a thing to keep an eye on if those things are interesting to you, because creating an entire security model off of Electron is about as good an idea as it sounds like it.
So what is it called here? I actually didn't see this before. Do you know what the platform is called?
Cloudflare put out a blog post a few days ago called, I believe, Cloud Computing Without Containers, in which they pretty strongly buried the lead of like, we have created an entire cloud platform around this stuff. And they got called on it somewhat by like people being like, this seems like a bad idea. And their responses are very self-assured and arguably comedy gold. So there's that.
I mean, I spent a few weeks ago, I spent like maybe 5 days digging into V8, and well, actually specifically into Node.js, not in mostly around Node.js, but a bit of V8 as well. And I've looked at it in the past as well, and I'm not as confident as they are.
No, I mean, all of this is built upon Node, right? It's all going and partnering with NPM, and no, I'm not as confident as they are either. I'm a little alarmed.
You could talk about NPM's history if you want.
Right.
That, but yeah, it's another disgusting decision. So, fuck. I'm sorry. You got me a little worked up, to be honest. Far more than I should be.
So now,
but talk about interesting opportunities for attack surface.
Right. Yeah. Go ahead and consult for 10 years and retire. Fuck it.
So Ian, do you want to talk a little bit? I guess now, so you're saying you have a new job that's to do with pen testing cloud environments like this and DevOps environments. I wasn't sure.
Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was saying I wasn't sure if you would want to discuss, I guess, some of the newer ways or the techniques that you would use in this that would maybe differ from a sort of traditional pen testing thing, where you would actually hit cloud services, because I feel like we talked a bunch. We had a whole episode about cloud security. We talked a bunch about DevOps, DevSecOps, pipelines, containers, all that. But I feel like a lot of us still who might be listening are not really aware of some of the sort of things that goes into this, where a lot of things are coming into the cloud environment, and there's a lot more room for error where people are sort of just following the trends and installing and doing whatever framework they see other people doing and maybe not doing it correctly. So I kind of wanted to see your thoughts about what your techniques are, I guess, for actually assessing a cloud environment, because they're usually pretty massive.
That is a massive question.
Yeah, it's pretty big. You can break it down however you want to, or not answer it at all. But I guess I want to just pick your brain and leave it open-ended to share what kind of things that you have sort of discovered or that is useful to you.
Well, if I'm really getting meta about it, I don't know that I want to talk about my work life in a ton of detail for
Absolutely,
reasons.
you don't have to do that at all. No worries.
But generally speaking, I mean, the thing that you said about like there's, people use these new frameworks, they're kind of the hotness, people really want to use them and they're excited to, but they don't necessarily know how to set them up right. A lot of these surfaces are massive and involve kind of paradigms that don't really apply to a lot of kind of our understandings about security testing and what security tools look for. They're not necessarily looking for things that are ephemeral, that are stateless. They're a lot of the telemetry and things like that that sort of security tools traditionally have just don't really work that well in a container context. And I think that there's a lot of room for growth in terms of understanding both on the end of people setting it up, and also I would argue on on the pen tester end. There's I think a lot of people are still sort of trying to wrap their minds around all of it, and that's understandable because there's a lot. And I think I feel very lucky to have come from a DevOps background to be able to have exposure to those kinds of techs and not have to like learn about them all from scratch while learning about all my other things at the same time. So I'm just validating that it's hard and it's complicated for pretty much everybody. And yeah, I don't know. That's I think that's as much as I would like to say about that in relation to my work life right now. Also, though, I will say that people who are planning on pen testing cloud stuff or things that involve cloud providers, if you're pen testing anything that touches AWS, you have to get permission from Amazon. If you're touching something that has a lot of cloud provider dependencies, you need to get permissions from all of those third parties or they're going to go after you. So, if you have 6 of them, you need to, either your client needs to do it or you need to do it, depending on how you're setting your testing stuff up. But it is important to know that needs to be done, because otherwise you can run into some trouble doing that.
Yeah. Remember, it's just somebody else's data center.
Right. Totally. No worries. It's fine.
Yeah, I've definitely got a couple of actually had a few cease and desists from people in here from Amazon. They go quick if you run Nmap on them.
Oh, Amazon does not fuck around. They will shut you down so fast, or they will shut your client down so fast, and then your client will be upset, in my experience.
Yeah, I got a cease and desist email within minutes of me starting an Nmap scan from an AWS box without asking for permission. So, yeah. Good stuff.
Were you scanning internally, or were you scanning your own AWS infrastructure, or were you scanning outward?
I was scanning my own AWS infrastructure. It was just another box that I had, and I was just testing.
You have to get permission to do your own too.
Oh,
yep.
boy.
Yeah, it says
if you run Nmap against localhost on an AWS instance, they'll shut you down. It's crazy.
Good stuff.
Ew, somebody's sensitive.
I guess do you have any other last words, I guess, on cloud security stuff, and before we can move into maybe some CTF sort of things?
Yeah, I don't know. I encourage everybody to learn about this stuff because I think that as I said, there's a lot of room for growth in terms of understanding, and there's a lot of opportunity there, both in terms of, interesting attack surfaces that are not necessarily well configured or understood, and in terms of like how much of a difference you make as a defender. I think, there's a lot, and it's a pretty wide open field that to me is pretty exciting because I like the emerging tech game, and if that kind of thing, and if playing catch up with 3-month dev cadences sounds fun to you, like come hang out. There's lots of room for contributing and for play. And yeah, I don't know. That's pretty much what I have to say about. I mean, I have a ton of stuff to say about that. I could talk about this for days, but
that is all
that is
you
what I have to say about that right now.
Awesome. And so, do you have any links or places where people can see your talks or any upcoming talks people could go to?
I am not understanding you right now. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. Hold on. Who's typing real loud? The blind hacker. As I said, do you have any links to any of your talks or any sort of resources for people who want to check out some of your stuff?
Yeah, I am not good at copy pasting and typing at the same time, but most of my talks are on YouTube, and you can look them up. And there is, I have a slide deck that's out there, and another couple that I probably ought to put up. If you watch my DerbyCon talk and you're like, what was the name of that tool that Ian neglected to put on a slide? This is probably my biggest regret as a speaker ever, because I get like 30 DMs about this a week. That tool is called NetAssert, NETASSERT. It's done by Control Plane, and that is the one that I am referring to that I grievously neglected to put on a slide.
Yeah, we'll definitely link in our show notes all this stuff that you've mentioned so far.
Cool.
And anybody who's interested we'll link that DerbyCon talk and anything else in the future.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
Thank you so much.
Cool. So yeah, I guess let's we can start moving into some of the CTF sort of things, because you've been involved in a bunch of different things that I've seen on the internet like recently. And yeah, I guess I just wanted to say, if you could tell us a little bit about some of your CTF experiences.
Absolutely. I really love doing CTFs. For me, it's kind of the only sport I've ever been good at. It's really fun. I really like doing them. And one thing that has consistently been the case in CTFs that I've done is that I'm the only woman in the room. Or maybe there will be one other one who will kind of wander in and then wander back out. Sometimes there will be another couple of them, but there are very, very, very few of us. And for me, CTFs have been so valuable in being able to grow my skills in different areas and being able to like sharpen my sword, and I want that to be a thing that other women have the opportunity to do, and more importantly, like feel like they have the opportunity to do, because I think that a lot of women are just very intimidated by those spaces, and don't feel like they belong, don't feel like they're smart enough, don't feel like they have the skills, maybe just walk into the room and see a bunch of dudes and are like, oh no, I don't know that I feel like I belong here, in a sort of very just immediate sense. But CTFs are great, and I want other women to be able to access that and to be able to feel like they can. And so one of the things that I have that is either a positive or a negative personal quality, depending, I guess, on how you look at it, is that it's very hard for me to see something that seems like it could be improved without wanting to improve it. I guess it's DevOps, And I was like, what can I do about this? And in Minnesota, where I live, for developers, there's an all-women hackathon called Hack the Gap, which happens every winter. And they have this model where everyone who participates is a woman, all skill levels are welcome. It's designed as this space that like learning and experimentation are really really welcomed, really valued. And when I was a developer, I participated in it a few times, and it was just this really wonderful, supportive space where like everybody felt like they could come and be themselves and ask questions, and like everybody learned together, and you could just watch people grow in real time, and it was gorgeous. And as I moved away from development and toward becoming more of a breaker than a builder, it was like, I want women in these spaces to be able to have access to that kind of energy, to a supportive learning space like that. And so it was like, can I take this model and can I translate it to a breaking context? And so what I did at DEF CON was, sort of thinking about this because I wanted to do the, CTF stuff at DEF CON, and was one of the women that WISP sent via sponsorship because my random number came up. So I was talking to other women in the WISP channel, and I was like, if we had a space that was like a, where women could participate in a CTF and where learning was encouraged, would that be something that they would be interested in? And there would just immediately everyone's like, yes, I absolutely want that. I've always wanted to do a CTF. I've never felt like I've been able to do it, but that's like a thing I want so badly. And it was like, okay, cool. Well, clearly this is a thing that people want, so let's make it happen. So I called a team, was like, if people want to participate in this, like, let's make it happen. So they started out with like 2 women, and then there were like 5, and then there were like 12, and then there were like 20, and eventually 60 women signed up.
Yeah.
And I think 40 to 45 women ended up participating in the CTF in real life at DEF CON. And it was exactly what I wanted it to be. It was all skill levels and experience levels working together. I got some sort of subject matter experts, like forensics engineering, to like come and help with, if there were newer players who were interested in those topics and wanted to learn more about those things, like. And those of us who were more experienced kind of helped the new people along, and we all like worked really collaboratively together, and it was great. And it was like, I want there to be more models like this, and so, and like more examples of this where women can come in and feel like they can do the thing. And so I called one kind of impromptu at DerbyCon, and coming up, we're going to do the Metasploit CTF online, and this one is the first all online CTF we've done like this, which I think will be fun. So it's an open invitation. If there are women or non-binary who are interested in participating and playing, I just invite them to the Slack team, and then we all work and play online together. And the point is not to place. The point is to learn. And so all skill levels are welcome. There are no stupid questions. People can, there's no time commitment necessarily. Like, people can come in and out as they want and ask the questions as they want to. And the idea is that people just learn and work closely together and like feel like they can experiment and play. And like, I've seen great success with it. I'm really proud of all the women who have played in there, and I'm really proud of all the women who I haven't played with yet who are going to play with. People have been doing amazing in there, and it's a thing I want to see more of.
That's really awesome. Yeah, I saw some of your pictures. I forget which con it was actually. There was just a bunch of ladies, and you're like, oh, we're all meeting up, and there's just a ton of them. It's just like the most like gang picture ever, and then you all did a CTF. So pretty sweet.
Thank you.
But yeah, so yeah, we've heard a lot of great things about your group and the people that you're working with, and I really wanted to like let you just talk about, what are some of the real barriers of entry that you've seen with the people that you interact with, because there's a lot of people in general that have a hard time with wanting to sign up for CTFs because it is intimidating. It's a very like macho sort of thing, like we're the best hackers in the whole earth and blah, blah, blah. But there's a lot of people that are clearly a lot more skilled, but they don't feel they have a platform to actually go and try stuff out. So I guess, I don't know if you wanted to talk to us a bit about some of the people that you've worked with and what are the barriers that you are seeing, and how are you overcoming those by working in a group?
So it, yeah, no, it's super real. And it's not a problem that is limited to women. In doing this, I've talked to a lot of guys who are like, I wish I had something like this when I was a noob. Like, I've never felt like I had a space where it was okay for me to come in and ask questions. Like, it's, like these spaces are intimidating for us too. And that's super real and like super valid. And I would love it if some guy out there would come and, create CTF resources like that for noobs who are guys. Like, I feel like I don't scale super well as it is. And it would be amazing if I were not the only person out there who's doing work like this. So if anybody's feeling inspired, like, please go forth and do that. That would be awesome. I mean, generally speaking, yeah, it's like, I think, you go into CTF spaces that aren't ones that I have a hand in, and you feel it. People very much have their heads down. They're not smiling. They're not talking to each other. Like people, if you come in and like, it's not really a question asking kind of space, and there's, I mean, like CTFs are competitive, even if I'm not necessarily emphasizing that, like, but they are competitions. But people get weird around competitions, and so they're not being nice to each other. They're not helping each other, and I think that can create really intimidating spaces for people where they're like, oh, I'm not good enough to be in here. Like, I don't feel like I'm smart enough. I don't feel like I belong. And but also like, yeah, you are. Like you almost certainly do belong in there, and like you are. I have complete faith that you are smart enough. Like one of the women that we were playing with at DEF CON came in the morning and was like, I don't think I have any skills. Like, I don't think I'm smart enough to do this. Like, I don't know that I feel like I'm able to. And that evening, there was the kind of Whispacker 1 bug bounty thing event. And one of the women who had expressed that in the morning totally swept it, like just got everything, won a bunch of money, and good for her. That's awesome, And she came back the next day and she was like, thank you for providing this space, because I wouldn't have necessarily felt like I would have belonged in that space or been able to do that if I hadn't had like this morning. And like, fuck yeah, that's what I want. Like a lot of people just, they have the skills, they have the know-how, like they just need the tiniest little push. And like, it's a really beautiful thing to be able to watch people grow, and yeah, that's a thing I want to see more of for everybody, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like it's a sort of thing where people just are always going to try to be closed off and have their own sort of little club of whatever exclusionary sort of thing. But I mean, there's tons of people that are just awesome. That you I feel like the sort of old mindset of just like things have to be, I don't know, I guess like a boys club sort of thing is slowly coming down. But we're seeing like really awesome people just come out of the woodwork that maybe even 5 or 10 years ago would have been given a lot more shit than they are now. I'm not saying that they're not anymore, but it's just good to see that there's those sort of spaces that are being developed by people that they can actually bring their own people up, and be involved in the whole community as a whole,
Absolutely. Yeah. And there's, like there's so much talent out there, right? Like there are so many people who have so many brilliant ideas, and the more we create a community where those people can feel like they can be a part of it and feel like they can share those ideas, like the more we all benefit from that.
I'll say something. Absolutely. So I went to a CTF kind of for noobs thing last year in Annapolis, Maryland. I'm trying to pull up my laptop because I put their sticker. Hacker Grounds. They put together a CTF on last year, and I specifically sat at I sat at the table. I walked in, I was like, I've seen those people before. I've seen those people before. Like, I've seen these people at a few cons, but I don't know if they're very good at CTFs. And I specifically sat at their table, and turns out it was all of their first CTF. All of them. This is the first time they've ever done a CTF. So I was like, well, there goes winning. And I was joking with them, but they kind of like took it. I was like, guys, I'm joking. I'll do whatever it takes to teach you guys some stuff. And sure enough, we get into it. And, I showed them, by the way, if you want to do some PHP stuff, this is what you do. And by the end of the day, we only had like 50 points on the board out of like 8,000. But I'll tell you that those 6 individuals at the table will from now on guaranteed at least get those flags. And, when I went to DerbyCon, sure enough, there they were on their own team. I don't know where they placed, but they weren't struggling, they weren't sad, they weren't upset. They were like, well, we didn't get what we wanted, but we still did work. I was like, there you go. That's what it's about.
Yeah, and it's about learning, I mean, like the and about sharpening your skills, like, and if you can confidently leave saying that, like, yeah, I learned stuff, like I taught other people a thing, somebody taught me a thing, like that's awesome. Like really that's what it's about at the end of the day.
I just want to quickly just jump in and say there is a CTF channel on Thug. If anyone wants to play one that ThugCrowd isn't playing, like we haven't done whatever, like just post in there and someone will play with you. Like there's no real like ThugCrowd CTF team. It's like go there and do it, and other people like exactly what you guys are saying. Just try talk to people. If someone sees you with a question or you ask something, then someone will respond.
Yeah, it's been pretty cool. I remember, I forget, it was the Seesaw one. I came on and all of a sudden someone just posted it. I think you posted it, and then everyone just started doing it, and it was just like really cool. But yeah, that's awesome though. The sort of community is being built up though with all of their, people that you're involved with, Ian, and definitely want to see more stuff like that. But I really would like to know though what your thoughts, I guess, are on how do you get more women involved in both infosec and CTFs. I mean, you could answer it either way, but I just feel like there's a lot of pushes for increasing, I guess, exposure at a younger level for STEM sort of things. But I guess I'm interested in hearing your takes on how you would actually entice more women to get involved in this sort of space.
Well, I think that okay. I have a daughter who's also going into tech. And, watching her navigate her way through middle school, junior high school, with fewer and fewer girls on her, in the classes relating to engineering and computer science every year. I mean, you can watch this happen. It is happening. I don't think that it's that girls are not interested. I think that girls are interested. There's nothing inherent to, being, growing up, female that that means that you're not going to be interested in STEM subjects. The thing is that there's so much bullshit in society, if you'll just excuse my French for a minute, like that says that every girl who runs into a teacher who's like, are you sure you don't want to be doing something else, or boys in their classes who are giving them shit for being there. A lot of it isn't like, can girls get more interested in STEM? Like, girls are here, girls are interested. It's, can we make the environment better for them? And that starts at a young age and it continues our whole lives, right? So it's, like, we need to make an industry that that is inclusive and welcoming to people who aren't men. And there's 1,000 different ways that could be done. Part of it is, I would say, like, language erasure. It sounds kind of like whiny, like complaining about nothing, but like, if you're constantly being called an ops guy, and every hacker who gets referred to in the generic is always he, and you only ever see pictures of men on panels, men speaking, men depicted, if there's no representation of people who look like you, I think that can be really hard for people. They're like, oh, I don't belong here. It's the case on conference panels. It's the case in CTF's rooms. It's the case in a boardroom, And so I think having spaces that have more women in them, being thoughtful about the language that we use to describe people, and and creating communities where people can feel like they can be themselves and in fact can be themselves without getting shit for that, I think is a really important set of things that would make a really big difference in terms of making people from more diverse backgrounds feel more welcome where they are. Because people want to do this stuff. There are brilliant female hackers out there. It's
Absolutely.
just, we want to have a space where they can feel like they can be.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. Just something that I feel like maybe a lot of people need to hear is that there are a lot of women and just people that I guess aren't men that are interested in this sort of thing, and just that the whole setting up the environment for it is like key. I mean, just being able to even speak without the sort of overtones that a lot of people might gravitate towards usually. I'm just being kind of mindful of that, when you're talking in a group full of people, because if you're just the one person who's being like, a jerk or saying sort of just like pointless misogynistic sorts of things, maybe, are, it just, I don't know, it doesn't contribute anything at all to any of the sort of conversation that you're having. And yeah, all it does is just attract people and want people who would probably want to work with you on some cool projects, not ever want to speak to you. So just a message, I guess, to everybody who does talk like that.
What he said.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know. I feel like I've seen a lot of really amazing female hackers, just people in general, coming out of the woodwork recently, and it's just really awesome to see. And I hope that there's a lot more people that would want to get involved who normally wouldn't, because they would be afraid of the sort of culture, I guess, that surrounds it. But it's cool that it's changing, and it's cool that it's becoming more inclusive, and there's a lot of badass people that are just here to share resources and actually hack stuff instead of just talk shit to each other.
Totally. I mean, like what I want to do is hack all like I'm excited about this stuff. I want to geek out about it. I want to geek out about it with other people who are excited about it and have us all learn and grow together. Like that's awesome. That's like, to me, that's what it's about,
Awesome. Oh yeah. So yeah, we got about 5 more minutes left. Is there anything else that you want to say? Any shout outs you want to do or anything while we're here?
If you are a woman or non-binary and you want to join the ladies CTF circle, then DM me on Twitter. My DMs are open. I would be thrilled to add you. This is a thing I'm going to keep doing. So yeah, if you are somebody who feels inspired by that and wants to organize things where you live or at the cons you go to increase diverse participation in CTFs or whatever else, like that's fucking awesome. You should go ahead and do that. You don't need to ask me for permission for it. And I'd love to hear about the things that you create. And just generally speaking, I think I would love to encourage people to to make an effort to make things better where they are, because it doesn't always take a whole lot to like make somebody's day brighter or to like make the community better. And I think if we all put in our our amount of effort in our little corners, like I think different larger whole. And like I want to encourage everybody to do that because I think that is a great thing to do.
Awesome. Oh, thank you so much. It's been awesome having you and hearing all of your insights about DevOps and Kubernetes and all the CTF stuff. So yeah, what is your Twitter again? Just for people.
It's IanColdwater, which is my name. So IAN C like cold, OLDWATER. So like Coldwater. And yeah, feel free to come follow me. Say hi if you want to.
I have a
And
question.
yeah.
Do you use a block list on Twitter?
I do not use a block list. If I have blocked anybody, I have blocked them personally for some reason or another, but I could.
All right.
Okay, that's all.
Anybody have any other questions for Ian before we go?
Thank you so much for having me on. This has been great. I really appreciate talking with y'all, and thanks for being here.
Oh yeah, thank you so much. All right, so everybody, yes. What's our calendar? I'm trying to pull it up now. Yeah, thanks everybody for listening. Our next week, Shell, do we have null cookies next week?
Very possibly. He said he's not quite sure.
Okay.
But...
yeah, we're still getting our stuff together. I'm still getting my stuff together since I took a break and then didn't do anything for the podcast. So yeah, but shout out to our Patreon supporters. We have Anthony V, David Freytag, Dead Rabbit, Derek G, Gabe Ortiz, Hamburger Keyboard, James, just James, Matthew H, Mayur, No Cookies, thanks, Rob Poners, Sterling Archer, Talon, and Walski. It's quite a bit of people we have now, which is awesome. Anybody here? Also, I'm establishing a PO box tomorrow so that I can mail out the CLSSPs that we have not mailed out to people yet. So yeah, we will get all that stuff together and out. Anybody who is a Patreon supporter of $10 or more gets a automatic CLSSP certification, and they can put it all over their LinkedIn. Any $2 people can also get a virtual one that is not that's be sent to them in the form of a PDF, and they can hang on their wall. And yeah, thanks everybody for coming out and watching everything with us. Anybody have any last words before we go?
Shut up and get a lawyer. Dan's not here.
Dan's on a plane somewhere. I thought he was going to be talking to us from there, but I guess
Yeah.
plane Wi-Fi.
Yeah, plane Wi-Fi is like 1 second lag. GG.
Yeah, he said on Twitter he's going to try, and then he posted after that, nope.
It happens. But yeah, thanks everybody for joining. We'll be back next week. So hit us up if you need anything. Anybody also who is looking to get hired or fill a position, please hit us up. You can join our Discord, elite.club, or you can DM us on Twitter for sharing that info with us. Until then, thank you all.
Thank you.
Exoplanet.
It was good.